This week's video is about the Gallicas that I have personally have grown. The first one up is Belle Isis, or Belle Isis. I'm not sure how that's pronounced, so I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Um, it's a light pink Gallica. Oftentimes in literature, will say that this may not be a true Gallica. A lot of the history behind it is uh, non-clear, to say the least. Um, for me, I only grew it in Oregon and only for a couple of years. It stayed decent in size. For Gallicas, it was pretty well behaved in my yard. Not too much running around suckering like several other Gallicas do. The next rose is Charles de Mills. This happens to be the uh, rose that introduced me to the old garden roses. Um, Again, its history is a little bit unknown, um, with it being potentially one of several different names. But I'm just going to call it Charles de Mills. That's what I bought it as. That's what I've grown it as. I first planted it back in '97, and it has followed me from Oregon to Georgia, back to Oregon, and now here in Missouri. Um, it does sucker, which is fine with me. I don't mind roses suckering and spreading throughout the yard. Um, it like all other Gallica, or yeah, all other Gallicas, it is a once blooming rose, um, and the color does change, so it is pretty neat that way. Um, it happens to be my favorite rose. I like it a lot. The next rose is Desiree Parmentier, which I probably mispronounced. It's a pink Gallica rose. I've only had it for a couple years in my yard. Um, it grows quite a bit. I would say it spends a lot of energy growing, um, but it does put out quite a bit of flowers as well. So it's definitely worth having, in my opinion. The next Gallica is Marianne, bred by Paul Barden in the early 2000s. So it's a newer Gallica, as most of the rest of them, if not all the ones that I'm showing you, were from the 1800s, or possibly earlier. Uh, it, Paul Barton used um, Abraham Darby, which is David Austin Rose, as one of the parents, along with Duchessa de Montebello as the other parent. Um, for me, it has gotten quite a bit big. I have two plants. One of them is probably 8 by 8. The other one is 10 by 10. Um, it doesn't sucker, so these are large shrubs that don't sucker. It produces a lot of flowers. It is once blooming. Um, for me, in my conditions in Missouri, I found that it has a tendency to be a lighter cream with like apricot peach colors in the middle, but there are times that there is a brighter, darker apricot coloring to the flowers. Those are, in my experience, those have been the exception, not the norm of them. But it's a very good plant, great flowers. I enjoy the plant quite a bit. The next rose is Tuscany Superb. This is a rose that will sucker quite a bit if it's on its own roots. Um, it often will be dark purple. I have seen it go a little lighter depending on the temperature and the sunlight, but it's usually dark purple for me in Missouri. Um, in my experience, it's one of the shorter blooming Gallicas. Here in Missouri, it's only about 2 weeks and then it's done. So if you want something a little longer, that just keep that in mind. But if 2 weeks is all you want from the Gallica, this rose fits great. This next rose is the Apothecary's rose, Rosa Gallica officinalis. Um, it's one of the older Gallica roses, if not the oldest Gallica rose that we grow in our gardens now. It did sport into Rosamundi, which I think is actually how I wound up with Rosa Gallica officinalis. Is I think I did have Rosamundi, and it uh, wound up developing or reverting back, so to speak, to uh, the Apothecary's rose. It does sucker both the Apothecary's rose and Rosamundi sucker. This next rose is Boula de Nanteuil, which I'm sure I mispronounced. I only grew this in Atlanta, um, and it bloomed the 2 years that 2 of the 3 years that I had. The first year it just grew. Um, it's a purple Gallica. For me, that's about as what I can say is it was a purple Gallica. And I didn't think there was anything to write home about it, but other people may feel differently. This next rose I grew in Atlanta. I believe it's a Gallica or maybe a hybrid Gallica, hybrid China, something in that ballpark. Um, it was sold to me at the Botanical Gardens in Athens, Georgia, as Cardinal de Richelieu, which it is not. Um, in my yard, it wound up being 14 by 14. It didn't sucker a whole lot, um, but it would put out a ton of blooms. Um, I would say by the time it got 14 feet by 14 feet, it was putting out 500 to 1,000 blooms on it. It was usually in full bloom right around Mother's Day. So this rose we actually would cut and take to church and give to all the mothers in our congregation. Um, I've only seen this bloom once, one other place, and that was in the Sacramento City Cemetery in 2017. Um, there's been a few other roses that look similar that I've seen like on the web, but I'm not sure what this rose is called. So I just call it my Athens Gallica rose. This last rose is Ellen Tofflemire, another rose bred by Paul Barnon in the early 2000s. Uh, it was bred by using Tuscany Superb as one of its parents. It does sucker some, just like Tuscany Superb suckers. Um, for me, in Missouri, I found that it blooms a little bit longer than Tuscany Superb. It has a color similar to Tuscany Superb, maybe a little lighter purple, but it does fade darker than when it is new. Thank you for your time and have a good day.